super funny story. Do you remember I told you about Frank? He's a guy who I went to school with back in the day, and I've mentioned in one of my many articles about the Commodore 64, or more specifically the Commodore 128, that I remember I had this school friend and he had a paper route, and he basically saved up money to buy himself a Commodore 128. And I used to hang out at his place, and we used to try out modems and connect to BBSs, and it's all very exciting stuff. So I just mentioned that in passing, I believe, when I acquired a C128 myself, like 30 years later, fairly recently, a few years ago actually. So I wrote that article and mentioned him by name in it, and a year or so went by and he contacted me. We've lost touch like decades ago, literally after school. Once I went from where I lived to Berlin, we just, lost touch, and it's just what happens. Nothing malicious, it just happens. That was the time before we had mobile phones, before we had Facebook, so it was difficult to keep track of people and stay in touch casually. So it's interesting how the internet has kind of changed the way we make connections, or we find one another again when we've lost touch with one another. Terrible motorbikes. I hate noisy machines. Anyway, not my point. The point was noisy machines. My point was that he Googled himself and my article came up. And I remember Googling him when I wrote the article, and I didn't find anything about him, so I was going to contact him and just get in touch because of that. It didn't happen. So very interesting. I write this article, years later he Googles himself, my article comes up, and he gets in touch with me. So very cool. So that was a few months ago, and we've been emailing back and forth since then, and it's so nice to be back in touch with an old school friend. And it turns out he's working for a company that has sent him to Mexico literally last week. So he's in Mexico right now on business, and as kind of an aside, almost like a half joke, at the end of my email I'm mentioning, hey, Mexico's just around the corner from where I live, so if you have a layover here for a couple of hours or so or longer, let me know. I can get a bus down to the airport and we can have coffee. That'd be nice, catch up. So that was literally yesterday afternoon when I sent that email off. In the evening he responds and says, hey, I have enough air miles with whoever, Air Mexico or whatnot, and I can get a free flight on Saturday from wherever I am in Mexico to Miami, stay a night, and then go back on Sunday. That would be awesome. And I said, let's do it. That would be so cool. He lands exactly during the Subnautica stream, so I don't know, I'm just gonna do the stream anyway, and I'm sure we'll catch up somehow. I might start it an hour early or whatnot. Yet to be determined. It's just such a very fast and spontaneous idea. It's I haven't even had time to think about it, but I think just the idea of meeting an old school friend from 30 years ago who's on a business trip to Mexico, who are meeting in Miami Beach. We're both from Germany. That's just mind-blowing. Thank you, Google. I gotta thank you for this, and whoever else was involved in making that connection again. It wasn't Facebook, by the way. It's good to know. Yeah, so I thought I'd share this highly inspiring tale of my life with you, because that is just cool. That is just mind-blowing.